Could Duke basketball continue their winning ways this weekend in Winston-Salem when the Blue Devils take on Wake Forest? What about that win earlier this week against Miami? We've got more thoughts on it. It's a fun episode here today of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on this Friday, February 23rd, 2024. Excited to discuss Duke basketball's win against Miami earlier this week and getting set for a fun one coming up this weekend when they take on Wake Forest on the road. The Blue Devils have now won 16 of their last 18. Let's see if they can have that continue, and we'll have a good conversation about that today with our good pal Donald Wine from the Duke Basketball Roundup DBR podcast. Make sure you go check out all of his work. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. We've got some 5-star Friday shout-outs to give out a little bit later in the program. Make sure that you subscribe as well to our YouTube page. Really do appreciate your support there and continuing to grow this program. So without further ado, let's bring him on in. Excited to welcome in Donald Wine back once again here on today's episode of the podcast. Donald, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Very well. Thank you for asking. We talked a little bit earlier. It's always a good feeling when Duke basketball is playing the way that they are as of late, particularly so on a night like Wednesday night where everybody was making shots and just all together, just a complete team victory for Duke.
It was fun. As you know, JJ, I went to Miami for law school, so I wish them well on everything except for when they take the floor against Duke. And man, Wednesday was a fun night for Blue Devils. That was a great showing. Easily the best performance we've seen this year.
Yeah, we had a big question going into it as to whether or not Tyrese Proctor would be available for this Duke basketball team. He had missed the previous game going through that concussion protocol, but he was back. And yes, Miami was without a pair of starters who average combined about 28 points per game, and Duke wins by a 29-point margin. But you got to give credit for the game that was played on the floor, the shots that Duke was making. What were the big standout factors for Duke in that one?
I think the effort, first of all, the effort kind of permeated into everything that Duke did. It was from the, if you remember last year, we played UNC at home. We won that close game. Everyone was euphoric. And then we went down to Miami and absolutely just got blasted. And after that, the effort was the main issue there. Everyone's like, hey, short of maybe Ryan Young, nobody got on the plane to go to Coral Gables. This time around, everyone was on the plane. Everybody was locked in from the opening tip. And even though it was kind of a little back and forth to start the game, it wasn't like a run to start the game. Their runs have come kind of in the middle of that first half. If you look at the middle 10 minutes and really the last 10 minutes of the first half, Duke outscored Miami 21-9. That defense was all over the place. They were grabbing rebounds. They were getting steals. They were moving the ball around. 15 of the first 17 made baskets by Duke in this game were assisted. The only two that weren't was the reverse jam by Kyle Filipowski where he took 2 dribbles, and then the running flying yam by Jared McCain, which was the play of the game today.
Yeah, a massive play of the game for McCain. Good to see him get up a little bit, and good for this Duke basketball team to build off of good offensive possessions and having carry over into the next one. I thought that we saw a lot of that in the first half and even so in the second half as well, and they were able to limit a little bit of what Miami was able to do. If you're watching us on YouTube, we've got the stat broadcast feed put back up here with a full box score of the game. And at the bottom of your screen, something that jumps out to me, of course, is looking at this game. Duke had that 13-0 run, their largest run of the basketball game in the first half. Miami's largest run in the entire game was just a quick 5-0 burst in the first half of play. And other than that, they couldn't create any momentum, Donald, which I think when you look at something like that, that goes to show you that effort that Duke was having on the defensive end of the floor, taking care of the basketball and really making sure that Miami wasn't able to kind of make it a big thing.
Yeah, and fair credit, right? There was a lot of shots that Miami took that kind of rolled in and out or rolled around on the rim. But again, a lot of those we ended up with the rebound, 50-50 balls. It's not like Miami, didn't win any. They got their fair share, but the effort was there in each of them. And it felt like on every one of those possessions where Miami had an open shot and they missed it, it led to points on the other end for Duke. And those are the swings that earlier in the season we would see go the other way, right? We'd see Duke, miss a shot and go down and it'd be a 5-point swing against Duke. This time, Duke was taking advantage of those opportunities, whether they be missed shots, whether they be steals, whether they be other unforced turnovers that Miami had, or just sloppy, play with the basketball. There was a point, and this has been indicative of Miami all the entire season. They were wearing those new uniforms, the Fear of God uniforms. And I'm sure.
What did you think of those? What did you think of those, by the way?
I thought they were fine. They weren't necessarily great to me. I don't know what the vision was.
I was in the same boat.
Yeah, but I know what
hard to piece together. Yeah,
they probably burned them after the game. I'm sure of that because I'm sure they don't want to remember that game. But I feel like when it comes to Miami this year, they just feel they get dejected very quickly, and they take themselves out of the game when they're not playing well, and they're not efficient on offense. They weren't the other night. And Miami just doesn't have an answer. Coach L has been on the sideline, and usually he's very active with coaching. And he just was standing there for most of the game with his hand on his hips or just like crossed over. Like, what are we going to do? Because Duke was so clinical and methodical with how they played. And the defense, there was a point where they had 47 points with like 4 minutes left. And I told my best friend, like, I hope we can keep them under 55. Miami ended with 55 points exactly. And that was a last-minute layup that got them to 55. So they really struggled from offense. They've been struggling from offense the last couple of weeks, and Duke really did a great job of focusing on some of the guys that they knew could kill them and taking them out of the game completely.
All right, I'm going to set you up to talk about the Duke backcourt and not the two players that we talk about the most as of late with Jared McCain's killer performance last weekend against Florida State and then Tyrese Proctor's kind of injury. Let's talk about Jeremy Roach and Caleb Foster, the play that they have. Roach more so than Foster this year, but it's time to talk a little bit more about how Foster has been coming along this season. So your thoughts on those two players in particular's performance?
Well, let's start with Caleb Foster because, again, he has had the freshman inconsistency that plagues most freshmen, right? He's had some really great games. He's had some games where he's disappeared. And now he's starting to trend and understand that he is important to this offense. He's important to this defense. He's important to this team. And I thought while he didn't play well on offense against Florida State, I thought he showed himself well in many other ways, especially with Tyrese Proctor out. But now with Tyrese Proctor back in the lineup, I thought he did just as well. And, he hit a couple of threes. He was able to work the ball around. He got a couple of hockey assists. And a lot of these guys got the hockey assists that won't be counted on the stat sheet here.
Right.
But they were able to find open men and really work within the flow of the offense. And for me, what Caleb Foster is doing a lot better is he's taking what the defense is showing him and reacting to it. He's kind of taking the game and not saying, I'm going to force myself to the lane and try and get a bucket. If the lane's not there, he takes a three. If he's, has to pass and move it around and work his way into the corner and take a corner shot, he's doing that too. He's finding the ways to get active on the court and be open to make a play, whether it's shooting the ball or passing the ball, which I think is great. And with Jeremy Roach, his play this year has been nothing short of incredible. I think most people, when you think about Jeremy Roach coming back, everyone's thinking, oh, he might sit a lot more than we're expecting him to. He might not play as much. He might not be as much involved in the offense. He's very much the playoff germ that we've seen in the last couple of years. He's been that way all year. He's been the most consistent player all year. And he's been one of the best players in the ACC. I know he's not going to get the awards that he deserves at the end of the season, but this man has been one of the linchpins for this team. He's been the floor leader, the floor general when he's on the floor. And when it comes down to clutch time, who do we want to have the ball in their hands? It's Jeremy Roach first and foremost.
Amen.
Because he's going to make a play.
Amen. Excited to see Roach continue to lead the way for this Duke basketball team. John Shire talking a little bit about the Quinn Cook comparisons that people have had, and we'll dive in a little bit more to that here after we take our first timeout on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by one of our brand new sponsors here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're talking about our friends over at Ibotta. Grocery bills are so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibotta app and get cash back every time you shop. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop in hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you could buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner that you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but that's not the case with Ibotta. Just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and get the real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or even gift cards. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying it out by using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Once again, this is Ibotta that we're talking about. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Let's move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Donald Wine, who's a part of the DBR podcast. You mentioned it a moment ago, just how smooth Jeremy Roach has been this entire season. Really does deserve to be in all ACC conversation. And a lot of ways has been playing like an All-American would as they go throughout their career, playing for as prestigious of a program as Duke Basketball is. And then there's Coach Shire, who's talking about a 2015 senior captain point guard in Quinn Cook, who led the way to a national title. What do you see in those similarities?
I think the trajectory of the careers, right? You know, it's not like those guys were, not used as freshmen, but the way that they've improved from year to year is the story that Duke wants to tell for players who end up staying more than 1 year. They want you to improve the way that they have, to the point where we talked about before the season, like, hey, Jeremy Roach may have to sit. He's not going to get his 30 to 35 minutes a game. Well, that man is getting 30 to 35 minutes every game. Like he's to the point where when he's healthy, you cannot take him out of the lineup. You want him in at the end in clutch time. When the chips are down and you need a bucket, you're going to Jeremy Roach. And I think we all hope that the comparisons between him and Quinn Cook are similar in the fact that they would end in a national championship this year, which is how Quinn ended his career at Duke in 2015. But I think just the way that he's improved from his junior year till now as a senior and really elevating his game even further just shows how important he has been to this team throughout the time he's been there. And it's one of those things where we're kind of like, yo, can we like flunk him in school so we can keep him another year and keep him involved in this in some capacity? Maybe he's not going to the NBA. Maybe he's going to Europe for a couple years after this. We don't know, right? But I know if there's a team, Jeremy Roach would be a great part of any team because he brings those leadership qualities. He can shoot threes. He can drive the lane. He can, again, create in the lane. He can dish. And when it comes down to it, with the balls in his hands, with time running out, you feel confident that he's going to make a play. That's just how Jeremy Roach has been operating, and I'm so thrilled that he's been able to take his game to the next level this year.
The similarities are just so unbelievable, and even a lot of the off-the-court things in regards to, hey, they're both DMV area guys who come and start their careers at Duke. Really close to wearing the same jersey number, off by one, with Quinn Cook donning the number 2 and Roach wearing this number 3 jersey for all 4 years there with the Blue Devils. And then even further, that next step, Donald, that 3-point shooting number is one of the biggest things that increased throughout the course of their career and really just skyrocketed the senior season. I'm loving it, man. I don't know if it's a little bit confidence. I would say some of the looks are falling, but then I think if you're just making shots, they start to fall after a while, like the basketball gods kind of giving back to you a little bit. The outside shooting, though, has been so big in what Roach has been doing this year.
Yeah, you could tell even some of them, like, it's not even like last year he was taking bad shots, right? But he was taking more contested shots because guys would key in on him and figure out, hey, this guy can shoot threes. This year, it feels like he's taking more open shots because he's working his way around into position where he is open. But even the contested shots, you're like, well, that's still going in. He had that one shot. I think it was against Clemson, where he just kind of had that. It was like a couple seconds left in the shot clock, and he just kind of had a fall away 28-footer. And as soon as he lifted it off, you're like, well, that's good. Like, as long as the shot clock is good. And again, you have that confidence in the fact that the team trusts him, the coaching staff trusts him to make a play in those key moments. He has carte blanche to kind of run the offense. He's the floor general. He's the extension of the coaching staff that Duke always prefers to have on a roster. He wants to have every coach. Coach K would always do this, and even John Shire wants to have somebody on the floor who can be an extension of them when they're on the floor, so that if there's something going on, if we're again going on a run or we're at a deficit, you have a guy to bring them all together and say, hey, look, focus on the next play. Here's what we're going to do. That's what Jeremy Roach has brought to this team, and it's going to be incredibly useful down the stretch.
But then even more so when we look at, running the offense for John Shire, Quinn Cook running the offense for Mike Krzyzewski in that 2015 season, they're point guards by trade, but they were able to take more of a off-ball type role in what they're doing, right? Tyus Jones, spectacular freshman season. He's primarily handling the basketball for that Duke team. Now another number 5 in Tyrese Proctor, more jersey number similarities there. That's fun. With Proctor handling it a lot for this Duke basketball team. Caleb Foster handles it a ton, and not as much of Jeremy Roach, who's been a point guard by trade throughout his career, having to bring the ball up the floor. I mean, that's what we saw from Roach the entire Final Four run a couple of seasons ago, and now he's kind of easily adjusted and has just different responsibilities in the flow of the offense, and yet it still kind of goes through him.
It's kind of that street ball mentality, right?
Yeah.
Like with 4 minutes left in the game, you see him bring the ball up, and if you're not standing, you want to, because you're like, oh, play's about he got the ball in his hands now, something's going to happen. But yeah, like even this year, if you think about it, it's kind of the guards have kind of been split up in a way, and it's not always the case, but you have the ball handlers in Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor, and then you have the shooters in Jarrett McCain and Jeremy Roach. And again, all of them handle the ball, all of them bring the ball up at times, and all of them are capable of flipping these roles. But I think the great thing is that they're all, when they're in the game, no matter who of the 4 are in the game, if it's 3 of them or if it's 2 of them, they are able to communicate with each other to understand what roles they are playing at that particular time, what the team needs. I think that's been the biggest key of this stretch of play since the UNC game, is that everyone on the court is fully understanding where their roles are and how they complement everyone else on the floor. That's leading to the team defense that we're seeing. That's leading to the team effort that we're seeing. And on offense is leading to some beautiful basketball with us passing the ball around and getting open shots.
Pretty crazy to think about the fact there are only 5 regular season games left for the Duke basketball team, right?
We're almost a week from March, a little over a week from March. Like, let's go. We're almost here.
It's here. It is absolutely here. And it starts tomorrow against Wake Forest. And we'll talk about that game after our last time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and we want you to get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. So go ahead and you can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's wind this thing down. JJ Jackson alongside Donald Wine II from DBR, the DBR Podcast. If people, for some reason, don't know what we're talking about when we say the DBR Podcast, let's educate them for a moment, Donald, because they need to be. Give a quick promotion for your show.
Yeah, the Duke Basketball Roundup. We've been around since 2014, so we're in our 10th season, I guess our 10th year, I should say. We are coming up this weekend, or just short of this weekend. We're almost at 600 full episodes, and we also do some things we call DBR Bites, which are little nugget episodes, but the full episodes, we're at almost 600, which is incredible. So look out for 600. That's coming early next week. We'll have Kenny Denard, who appears in all of our 100 shows. Every 100 shows he comes on. he's a hoot. So you'll definitely not want to miss that one. But yeah, this season, as you know, JJ is getting thick. We're getting right up to March. We're at the end of the regular season. The ACC tournament is right here in Washington D.C. So I'm looking forward to that. And then after that, it's March Madness. We're really into the thick of things. And I think when you look at this team, you know, we did it last year. We're doing it this year. We're starting to get a lot better right as we get towards March. We're starting to make it where we kind of ascend to our best Duke basketball in March. And I think that's the key here is continue to go onward and upward. We're going to have a really, really tough game tomorrow against Wake Forest, a team that I feel like the ACC understands is good, but the rest of the nation is disrespecting a little bit. But at home, they're lethal. They're 14-0, and this will be a big game. Again, another, I call our little week here the revenge tour, right? Last year, we went to Miami, got blown out. Florida State, last time we played there, we got beat. Last time we played at Wake Forest last year, we got the doors blown off of us right after Christmas. So this is a nice little revenge tour thing where all these guys that were on the team last year can go, hey, we remember that game. We don't want to have that feeling ever again. So let's go out here and let's put the L in Lawrence Joel Coliseum tomorrow.
5 games left on the season for the Duke basketball team, starting with Wake Forest. All 5 games, ironically enough, will be played in the state of North Carolina with a road game at Wake Forest and then a trip to Raleigh for a road game at NC State. And then, of course, we're talking about Louisville, Virginia, and UNC coming to Cameron Indoor. So you mentioned the Demon Deacons a moment ago. They're so much better at home than they are on the road. Already played them, 9, 10, 11 days ago, and Duke was able to pick up a victory in that one. Although we talked about it on yesterday's program, Wake Forest missed their first 11 three-point shots in that game in Durham. I don't think that happens tomorrow.
No, I don't think it does either. And also, if you remember, they were 9 for 13 from the line. They usually shoot 80%. They're the second best free throw shooting team in the entire country. I think they have like five guys that shoot above 80% from the line. But the thing about it is in their wins, they get to the line a lot. In their losses, they don't get to the line as much. We've seen that even, when we played them, again, they only had 13. When they played Virginia just after that, they only had 5 trips to the line. Whereas you come back and you play Pitt, they go to the line 20 times and they knock down 19 of them. You don't want to give them those points. And also from 3, as you mentioned, they're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. So this team has the capability of really blowing the doors off of you if you're not careful. I think the defense needs to be there perimeter-wise, and also we need to get them in the foul trouble. Steve Forbes loves to go with his guys, but if he gets a lot of guys in 2-3 fouls in the first half, then he's going to have to start sitting some guys, and then you have guys coming on who may not be ready for all of the lights, right? So that is the key here, and I think at the end of the day, the biggest one is rebounding. My co-host Jason Evans had the great stat that we have won every single game this year where we've won the rebounding battle. So that if you want to break it down to one stat, there's your stat right there. Break it down to the effort is there if we're winning the rebounding battle. And if we're winning the rebounding battle and the effort battle, hopefully we're winning this ballgame.
Without a doubt. I think that Duke is going to be there on the effort side of things because they know how poorly it's been in other road contests. They responded well with Florida State and Miami after kind of being called out with that North Carolina game in particular. So Wake Forest, a team that's 17-9 on the year. They're 9-6 in league play. And to your point a moment ago, the ACC kind of knows how talented this team is, but that doesn't always translate to what the March Madness folks are thinking when they start to put together the NCAA tournament picture. When you look at level of wins and a massive quad 1 opportunity for Wake Forest, that's this one. That's got to be a little added motivation for the Demon Deacons. Despite what their head coach Steve Forbes might say, this is a game that really they need to have to kind of sway everyone's thoughts on where they should be going into the NCAA tournament. Yeah,
this is – look, Virginia Tech could probably be one. I think they play them. And I think there's one other game that they play that escapes me that is a borderline, or Clemson. I think they host Clemson. That could be a quad 1 game. But when you're in the committee room and you're Wake Forest, you don't want to present, hey, we beat Virginia Tech and Clemson. You want to present, we beat Duke or we beat UNC. They have a game against Florida, a win against Florida that they had at home. And they also want to present a road record that is at least say, hey, when you play us on a neutral floor or on the road, we're still as tough as we are at home. We're not just a home-based team. So, but again, this is a huge game for them. It's a huge game for us. It really affects the seedings here for the ACC tournament. Of course, we're tied for first with UNC. We want to keep pace with them. But Wake Forest is trying to get that double bye. They're trying to move up, and they had the opportunity to do so with some of their final games. But as you mentioned, the big one is the NCAA tournament. The NCAA tournament, as of right now, a lot of bracketologists say that they're one of the first 4 out. Wake wants to make it where there's no doubt when they go in that room that when Wake Forest was brought up, they're slotted in somewhere as a 10 seed or a 9 seed or something like that. So this is how you do it. You for them, they want to win against Duke and use that as a chip to kind of say, hey, we get into the ACC tournament. Maybe we see another quad 1 win there. And then from there, you have to keep us. You can't keep us out of the tournament. So it's a really big game. And it's not, we don't need any other motivation for that. But Wake Forest is a tough group, and it's going to be a really tough game tomorrow. I really hope that we bring the energy and the shooting, because if we do, it'll be an exciting game for us too.
Yeah, the ESPN Basketball Index analytics have this one pretty dead even. Duke a 55% chance to win this thing. Wake Forest 45. And then one more number to reshare from yesterday. We got this number on the podcast from Connor O'Neill. As many people know, I'm calling this the Connor O'Neill Invitational, as he's the publisher for Devils Illustrated and Deacons Illustrated, does great work with both of those websites for rivals. Wake Forest, in their last 5 ACC home games, 50% shooting from the three-point line. In their last 5 ACC road games, 24% shooting from the three-point line. It's insane how much more confidence and shot-making ability they have in those home games as of late than they have on the road.
And in points, right? I think it's like they average 85 points a game at home.
Right.
You only average like 72 points a game on the road. So like it's a stark difference. And again, what they've created there in Winston-Salem has been great. It's very hard to win all of your games at home. It's near impossible, which is why it's so celebrated when we do it. Like Duke did it last year, and they made shirts for it because it's such an accomplishment to go through your home slate unbeaten. I'm hoping they're not making shirts in Winston-Salem at the end of this year, because that means that they took a W from us tomorrow. So at the end of the day, this team needs to come out and limit their shooting. It's super important, because when they get out hot, it feels like the momentum just kicks up an extra notch when they're in their own home gym. That's just how they've been playing. They feel comfortable with those rims. We're notorious with those rims. We're going to hear that clang quite a bit in the first few minutes. So don't freak out, ladies and gentlemen. Just ease into the flow of the game, and if we can ease into it, then we're going to have a back and forth game. And I think Kimpom even had it as like a 1-point victory for Duke. So this is everyone's predicting this to be a very close game. So do not be surprised if it is.
2 p.m. Eastern tip-off, Duke and Wake Forest on Big ESPN. It's going to be a fun game to follow and watch. And, of course, we'll have thoughts on it coming next week, as will you, Donald, over there on the DBR podcast. And as you mentioned a moment ago, episode 600 down the line here very, very shortly. Thank you for being here today, Donald. This has been a lot of fun.
Hey, always a pleasure, man. Good to see you. You're the hardest working man in the biz. So always appreciate you.
Absolutely. That's Donald Wine, and he's joining us here on today's episode of Locked on Blue Devils. Really good stuff for him, and really excited to see this basketball game play out for Duke. Let's keep the winning ways going. Again, 16 of the last 18 have been wins for this Duke basketball team, and definitely want to continue that trend, of course. If you have not done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast feed. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Got a couple of 5 stars recently from Charlie Prince. We got one from Poodle Duke 1 over on the Apple Podcast platform. So shout out to you guys here on this 5-star Friday. That'll do it for our show here today. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you on Monday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.